we have concluded verse 6, a significant verse, at least the way that it has been taught, because Krishna made some contradicting statements, such as, I am born, but I'm also born. I also come into this world. And so naturally you would, having a discerning mind, ask, how can you be unborn and be all pervasive and yet be born? Then what is there to be born if you are already everywhere? And to answer this, we had to bring three orders of reality. And the Paramartika, that's the absolute reality, which is Brahman. And that is unborn. It never comes to be born. It is without attributes. It remains as is. It will never be bigger or smaller. It is already infinite and limitless, and that is your true nature. And it enjoys the capacity to manifest the universe. And that capacity, here Krishna uses the word prakriti. We often sometimes also call it Maya. And this capacity manifests this universe, and this manifest universe that the scientists study and learn is the Vyavaharika reality, which we use the name of, which means transactional, or the world of joys and sorrows and emotions and colors, anything that's perceivable, hearable, sightable, feelable. So anytime you ever feel something, no matter how subtle or exquisite or profound, it is the Vyavaharika. That's a manifestation of Maya. And so it makes you now think about then, all those, incredible moments that you thought you found something. Maybe you thought that you found this reality, right? Maybe in your third eye, or maybe, in your heart or in your brain, or, and you maybe it was in the Dantian, sometimes they call it in the, the bottom region. And you thought, I've contacted this reality. Then you made a mistake. You committed an error. You mistook Vyavaharika, and you said that which is manifest and changes in its tone and its time, and it goes from manifest to unmanifest. You took that as the final reality. And Krishna explicitly says that is incorrect, because my true nature is unborn. Therefore, anything that is born for the first time, that you come to experience any time in your life, that was not the Paramartika reality, that was the Vyavaharika. And so the discernment now becomes between this Paramartika and Vyavaharika. But also the third reality is the Pratibhasika. Pratibhasika is what keeps most individuals stuck in life, because it is the dominant world for most people, where it's called my truth, my truth. And this is your truth, and this is my truth. But we're not talking about your truth and my truth. We're talking about the truth which is true in the past, present, and future. It is evident for everyone, assuming you have a clear mind. It never goes out of existence. It is unborn. It will never leave, and it is with you. It is you right now as your very awareness. That is the final reality according to the Advaita Vedanta vision. So why do we miss this reality? Because something so ordinary and so much that you take for granted, you always want this reality to be something bigger. You want it to be, some magical moment. Isn't this true if you look at your experience? There were times when you were wishing. I was like this too. I was wishing it to be some magical thing that is added onto whoever this me is. That was not even a question at that time. It was just a me who wanted something, and that something was this big thing. And that is strictly incorrect, because then it denies the reality, which is non-dual. And non-dual reality means that there's no two here. There's only one, which is manifesting as many forms. And why is it manifesting as many forms? Brahman enjoys the capacity which from itself arises the world of manifestation, all the while awareness, which is right here, right now, with you in this moment, never left. If Brahman changed to manifest into the universe, then Brahman or consciousness would not be with you right now. We would not have the concept of consciousness. You could not relate to the concept of consciousness or awareness, but it is with everyone. It is available to all people. As we said last week, who are you? You are that which illumines everyone's mind. So you are that universal light in whom, light in quotes, not that it's a physical light, in whom changes of everyone's minds is taking place all day long. So this week, there were so many changes that took place in reference to your mind and in reference to your body. So many. And there was this one non-negatable, unverbalized presence that you didn't have to sort of verbalize it. In fact, if you verbalized it, it even illumined that thought of verbalizing it. So it always remains uninterrupted. It doesn't interrupt you. It remains non-judgmental. It doesn't judge any thoughts. In the presence of it, whatever thought about the person comes, or in reference to this reality, it doesn't judge it. So you can say this reality doesn't exist. It doesn't judge that. It just lights it up. You can say, I don't know this reality. It doesn't judge that. It just lights it up. You can say, hooray, it's taking place for me. It's very clear now. It doesn't judge that thought. It just lights it up. Therefore, this uninterrupting, ever-present, invariable, constant presence of awareness, that is your true nature. So we are asked to start to recognize this presence in your life. There's something unchanging about you that never comes and goes. It is that presence which is available when you, as a person, are with your friends and you're feeling really empowered, right? And powerful and confident. You know those moments when you're with a familiar group of people and they are, you just feel naturally like very like, oh, I am so like, you know, big. You feel big. There's an I that feels big. You know, those moments with your girlfriends and boyfriends and then you're having a great time and you're joking and you feel like this is such a cool time to be with these people. I feel big in this company of people. Okay. And then they all leave, and then you're taken to maybe by yourself with a group of people that you don't know at all. And then now this big I is no longer big I. Now it feels a little bit small. It feels like, you know, introverted, introspected, a little bit thoughtful, vulnerable, a little bit you know, cautious. So it's a kind of a weaker I. And then in that weakness, in that smallness, you say, you know, I really like that other I, which was with the friends. I want to go grab that I again. So now what do? This small I calls his friends and says, hey, let's come over. Let's go for another meeting. And nobody asks you why. But if you were really honest, what would you say? So that I can make my I feel bigger. I don't like the small I right now. So now we all agree, and then we go, and again, your I expands. So you can see this I, this ahamkara in Vedanta is constantly expanding and contracting, expanding. And this is what 99.9% of the world population takes as the absolute I, as the absolute self. Vedanta says this is not who you are because it is in the presence of which it is known to be changing. If the presence in which it is known to be changing was itself changing, then the change could not be recognized. So this means the only way that you can recognize, or the change in reference to this I, this ahamkara, can be recognized if there is some unverbalized, uninterrupted, constant presence in whom there is this ahamkara that is expanding and contracting. That is your real nature. And not only that, but this expanding and contracting ahamkara, which claims I am a teacher, or I am a mother, or I am a father. Where is that ahamkara in your dream? Is it still saying the same statement in the dream? In the waking, it says, I am a king. I am a king. I am a CEO. But in the dream, it says, I am a beggar. So this means that the ahamkara that you entirely take to be true in this waking state itself is falsified through a dream state. In the dream state, it's an entirely different character. So if it's an entirely different character in the dream and a different character in the waking, then what is this character? It's entirely fictional. It's a fictional character. It's a fictional suit that is worn, which the world gives you a name, And then you sort of just naturally say, yeah, that's my name. I am that. But it's a fictional character. Who are you? You are the uninterrupting, ever-present, invariable presence in whom this fictional character is going in and out, expanding and contracting. And therefore, that is what the wise person recognizes directly all the time. And so, thus, Krishna then continues and says, why do I come into this world? And he answers this in verse 7. Yada yada hi dharmasya glanir bhavati bharata abhyuthanam adharmasya tadatmanam sarjamyaham.
Bharata, Arjuna, whenever there is a decline in right living and an increase in wrong living everywhere, I bring myself into being, assume a physical body.
So, having explained this vision, which is the most important and the only purpose worthy of being born and living according to the Veda, when there is time at some age, at some place where it is not possible to ascertain this vision because there's a rise in adharma, this is when people, by their collective, start to pray and ask for help because it's far too difficult for the few good people to contain the adharma that's percolating. And so, if you just imagine a football game where you have a coach, now the coach in a football game preserves the rules, he keeps everything in check. So, suppose they just kick the coach out and everyone starts to blow their own whistles whenever they want. Now, see, if one person does it, it's fine, it's not a big deal. But the thing is, you're never surrounded by just one. Everyone wants to do it. So this means everyone is going to blow their own whistles, and then for what happens, chaos ensues. So now the irony is, if everyone is given a whistle to blow, nobody can play the game. So you have to restrict certain rights from people so that you can have order on earth. And so this restriction is what we actually call rules. We say the rules of the road of driving system. So you cannot just sort of go left and right wherever you want. You have to go straight. That is the rule that I'm imposing upon you. Why? Because you live with other people. And so that's the way that it can work for all of us. So if you think about this, suppose there's no ethics, universal ethics, the right guiding principles in life. That's not an issue, actually. So what? I'm not living any ethics. So what? It doesn't have any consequence on you or the world. But is it really that simple? Considering you're always acting. When are you not acting? When are you not speaking? When are you not thinking? Never. We are always thinking, speaking, and acting. So now, if the speaking, thinking, and acting has no guiding principles, that means the dharma is being restricted away. What is going to follow automatically, considering you cannot stop acting or speaking? That which opposes dharma, adharma. For example, you could have a stagnant, a river that is flowing. A flowing river produces a fresh, clean water. The moment the flowing river stops flowing, what follows? Stagnant water. Now, what happens when there's stagnant water? Automatically, now it allows those nutrients in the water to settle. Now, when the nutrients settle in the water, when they have their little cozy place and they're not allowed to move and keep everything else fresh, then they harbor a perfect environment for algae and bacteria. Therefore, it's quite ironic, even though the nutrients can rest, you can call them the dharmic nutrients, they can rest in one place. If they're not moving, if they're not disseminating themselves throughout the entire river, they become very attractor of adharma. They become the attractor of algae and bacteria. So in that similar way, because you are always acting in your house and saying and moving and doing things at work, if there is no guiding principle by which your actions fall back on, by which they are guided, automatically, without even having to try, what's going to percolate slowly is adharma. That means you're going to find ways to cut corners, to think, selfishly, to disregard others' needs, to kind of have it your way. So this is why it is so important to bring, guiding, and maintain them in one's life. It's not a matter of just saying, it's okay, I'm a good person. You put a good person in a environment where the dharma is not encouraged, and the first person who's going to take up a dharma is that very good person. Just being good is not enough. One has to actively and personally reintegrate the principles of harmony and goodness and dharma into their mind, like eating the right food constantly. Therefore, because the environment starts to just sort of let loose this dharma, we don't need dharma, it's evident, it's so easy to follow it. Because a person is always acting slowly, one person does something or says something wrong. Initially, to others, it doesn't sound right, but then it starts to catch on. And eventually, the whole community starts to exercise non-ethical means. And thereby, for the good people who pursue moksha, it is not possible to do so anymore. And what happens? Because they cannot pursue and preserve ethics and pass it on to their children because it doesn't have a context anymore in society, then they start to collectively pray. And as they do, then avatara comes by that collective prayer. Therefore, avatara is not a decision of Ishvara. It's a result of collective prayers of the people in a particular region of the world. And then Krishna says, Tada Atmanam Aham Sajami. As a result of that collective prayer, I bring myself into being. And this bringing myself into being, in English, we call that Immaculate Conception. I think this comes from the Christian language. So that's called Immaculate Conception. A conception that's arising from a specific purpose to restore this collective unity amongst the people because they have gone astray. Why? Not because they're not in touch with Dharma, but because you left Dharma alone. You thought it is not important. So therefore, it's a huge lesson for us to recognize that the moment you take guiding principles out of your life, what follows immediately is Dharma. You don't even have to worry about it. It's sorted out for you. Even in Advaita Vedanta, if we do not bring dharmic principles once in a while, then we have, I call them enlightened idiots. In other words, they are, they know their nature, but they're extremely unpleasant to talk to, and the manners are not coherent with, a pleasant person. And so you don't want to be like this. You want to, be an example of a wise, self-managed, mature person. What's the difference between, again, a jiva and an avatar?
So an avatar is the Paramartika, apparently embodied in a human form, that carries with it no sense of karma. So there's no karmic, what is it, karma phalam?
Yes.
That every jiva has. So every jiva is here because of their past karmas. They have something to work out.
Despite the avatar not having unfinished business to bring in, still, when they approach the community, they are not well received. In fact, the more you are, sometimes, advanced in your thinking, when you go to a place that is not operating at your level, it's not very easy to get through at all. So it's also, it's letting you know how difficult or non-black or whitish this journey is. It's not a matter of just being an avatar, because we like to imagine this, right? You're a powerful person and suddenly you have influence. But we're not like that. You first step to build my trust. Who are you? I don't like your skin color. Even that can be, a marker for disregarding the avatar, right? So in that way, Krishna had to penetrate through all these minds, which are established in their old ways. And that is always a huge challenge. So if Krishna had problems, right, to see people, to help them, to like generally say, hey, I'm the Lord of the universe. I know what's the best thing for you. But is it that easy when you say to someone, I know what's the best thing for you? Do they just go, yeah, yeah, absolutely. I trust you. Yeah, absolutely. What's the best thing for me? Okay, I'll follow that. Is it like that? Never, never. Even if you're so close to this dear person of yours, in fact, the closer you are, probably the less you'll be listened to. And we all have experienced this before. So this means if you are not listened to, despite having and but really being educated in this, don't take it personally. Just know this is human nature. Human nature was never simple. It was always, there was always some zigzags to work through. This is just how it is. So therefore, you can relax and you can do your part, say your part. This is what I think. And I really think from my experience, this is the right thing to do. Consider it. You might want to consider it. So I'll leave that to you. And then you don't have to let it become your problem and let it crawl under your skin. Because now there's two people in the family who are affected. And there has to be at least one person who's lucid about things. And also understanding that everyone is ultimately on their own journey. No matter how close they are to you, if you knew them for 40 or 50 years, they are still on their own journey, most likely totally different from yours. In fact, sometimes some couples are very surprised when they kind of come after 40 years of marriage, the woman changes into a completely different damsel, right? Or something else comes out of her. And the husband's very surprised, like, this is not my wife anymore. What happened to her? And so, right, or same thing can happen to the husband. He can go a totally different way.
And I was saying, so can we say that Avatara is manifestation of another manifestation of Ishvara? And my question, another question I have is, how do we explain like inhuman powers in Avatara? Like we have heard and read so many stories of Krishna, like lifting a mountain on a pinky finger, and so many other stories. So how would we explain in Advaita Vedanta those supernatural powers, if you would say?
Sure. So the first question is, everything is a manifestation of Ishvara. So there's nothing really in that sense special about an avatara because there's only Ishvara here. Your body is also a manifestation because we said Ishvara is intelligence. So it's one intelligence that manifests as an avatara's body but avatara's body is nothing but flesh and bone, just like your body. And their brain is nothing but electrical activity, just like your brain. So in that sense, everything is a manifestation of Ishvara. See, the stories do touch us, right? Big mountain being lifted, or walking on water, or converting from something into fish. And they are powerful imageries that get communicated through culture. There's something about the human race that we remember big, outlandish, nonsensical, amplified ideas. It just stays in our brain, and it helps you to preserve a story. No one's going to remember a story that goes like this. Here's the Mahabharata. Arjuna was an accountant, and he was dealing with numbers. He got to the petty ledger, and he found a mistake, and then he had to correct it in his general books. Oh no, explained Arjuna. What do I do now? He then called his friend Krishna. Krishna said, load up Excel, my friend. And so Arjuna did. Full stop. See, now this story is so uninspiring, it's so normal that no one's going to remember it. But if I say that Arjuna was confronted with this huge army with 10,000 people, with big elephants and beautiful, powerful chariots with these horns and these warriors, and there was a sun reflecting upon their shields, and it was just, so bright you could hardly see, and yet you were so ready and you were amped up and you're looking around and cheering you upon your brothers. And then there was these two characters in the center, and they were on this golden chariot with the Lord of the universe in between, giving a greatest discourse to his student how to navigate this whole journey. And then you're like, wow, that's powerful. So the first way to answer this is that don't take it literally. It is a sake of imagery. That's how you remember every story. And also it wants to, it trains you to say, hey, this is the Lord. He can move mountains, right? So, you say, wow, Lord is the all-powerful being. So it's implanting these ideas. What is the nature of the Lord? So that one day when you hear about the proper teaching, then you say, those stories, that big mountain and that walking water, all that had a purpose. But now it's time to put that aside and talk real life, empirical, day-to-day practical living. So now you're like, okay, so it was just like a Santa Claus preparation, deer flying in the sky. It had a purpose. But if your parents told you, no, there's no such thing, because if you had to carry 300,000 presents in a one little cart of a deer, back of a reindeer, 100 grams each, so times 100 grams by 300,000, and you probably got about 300 tons worth of gifts on the back of a reindeer. And the reindeer cannot fly because the gravity is going to pull. No one's going to listen to this. It's too much for the child. Yeah. The second answer is maybe there are a degree of these powers which I don't even fully comprehend, because I'm born in this small time, in this small age, in this small body, and I have not seen it all. Neither has any one of you. And maybe there are some degree of powers, which we call siddhis, which can be, to a degree, developed. But to these vast degrees of taking a mountain, physically, that is impossible. Based on physics, that's not possible.
Yeah, I had a related question, which is a good time perhaps to put it in. I'm just pondering on the idea of Avatara as being a type of a balancing out process, like natural balancing out process. Say, for example, like in World War II, there were people like Winston Churchill and I think Franklin Roosevelt from the US, who had to sort of step up to challenge the Dharma that was going on at the time. And they would have just, had there been no war, they would have just been like normal leaders who looked after the economy and imports and exports and that sort of thing. And then also way back when we discussed the idea of the Mahabharata as being a metaphor of our internal processes. So it's sort of like the Avatara could be that point in one's life, just say you're gambling and drinking and taking drugs, and then you wake up one morning with no clothes and the police knocking at your door and all that sort of thing, and then you go, okay, I've got to wake up to myself, so that's the intellect coming in and taking control of the life.
That's a brilliant point, David. So David is saying that perhaps you don't even have to look at Avatar as an actual figure who is, by my prakriti, I come as though come into being. Rather, everyone is an avatar. The wise person is an avatar. He is the embodiment of truth. And so this is how we, in fact, look at gurus. Guru is an embodiment of truth. A wise person can also be an avatar. You could look at it like that. In fact, you could even say that many people throughout human history who have become brilliant very quickly in their art were an avatar of that art. If you look at Avatar in that sense, a purposeful coming, and the whole life has been dedicated to just disseminating mathematics, like Ramanujan or Carl Jung or Nikola Tesla or Thomas Edison, innovating and looking into electronics and working that out. So you could say that's also, in a sense, a purposeful birth. So the whole point of this is just to bring it down to earth so that your mind doesn't fly away, and imagine, right? Imagine how there was this avatar walking. Just look at outside the window, and this is how it was exactly before. How it is today is exactly how it was before. I wish we had cameras, really. It would just put things in perspective, because we love to look at these dead figures and just so much dramatize and romanticize about it, and create these big, unrealistic, sometimes movies about them. But just look outside your window. There's soil, there is air, there is noise. That's exactly how it is at all times, basically.
Hello, everyone. My question is, or my thought is, if we're saying that through prayer or through intention and will, we call forth a physical manifestation of Ishvara and what we're calling an avatar, but is that not just as unfathomable as, you know, Krishna lifting a mountain? I mean, how can we say laws of physics for one thing and then not, and in this case, well, this seems like the most acceptable answer. But at the same time, I also think from personal experience that I can create what I want with the will of my mind. So I do agree with that. But I would like to know what someone else would say, because I can't prove that. I'm not a scientist. I don't know how it works, but it happens. But my question is more about what makes us believe that it is us that has called forth the avatar? You know, if in that verse it's with enough prayer, with enough collective calling, how do we use laws of physics to explain that?
Sure. Well, for example, there was a study done in Washington, DC. I'm probably going to look this up, and I do encourage you because I have not verified this myself. This is what I heard. But there was, I think, 4,000 people meditating to decrease crime. And crime in Washington, D.C. got decreased that week for a certain amount of percentage. So that's one way to explain. When you have the collective power of the football stadium and they all roar upon that strike of the cricket, you feel that power. When the collective come together in a mastermind group to devise a plan, a strategy, then you have so much more power from collective minds putting it together. So in that same way, when random people, it's not like they say, hey, let's all of us, we're now going to pray for an avatar. That's not how it happens. One person prays in their own time, another person prays in their own time, another at their own time. That happens for years and years, and somehow you have a person born, which we then call an avatar. And they happen to be born in a family that has an influence, so they had the chance to spread their knowledge, to become relatively popular in the region, and to disseminate their wisdom and their influence upon others. So verse 8, why an avatar is born? Paritranaya sadhunam vinashaya chadushkritam dharma samstapanarthaya sambhavami yuge yuge.
For the protection of those who are committed to Dharma, and the destruction, conversion of those who follow Adharma, and for the establishment of Dharma, I come into being in every yuga.
So, paritranaya sadhunam, why do I come? For protecting those who are committed to Dharma and who know what is the right way to live. If there's no one's protecting them, then how would Dharma continue to be disseminated throughout society? So you have to protect those who are doing good, protecting the teachers, the priests, the popes, and anyone who is providing the general fiber that preserves society, that fabric of society that holds it all together. That's Dharma. That fabric, when it starts to polarize, what happens? Well, you can look at US politics several years ago, and you can see the pressure of that polarization, where it's so kind of polarized that you're not willing to find common ground anymore with the other side. So it just creates these huge divisions. And so they are protecting that fabric of the society. Then vinashaya dushkritam. This means conversion or destruction, conversion from adharma to dharma, or destruction of adharma. And the better way to explain this is, see, can you really convert someone who's adharmic? It's going to be a hard journey. So the way to interpret this is you point out to the best of your abilities that being in this way is not serving you. You don't convert people from adharma. You show them that what they're doing is not serving them. Like your means of just accumulate and hoard and at all cost is, while exciting, you're fearful of, losing your money. Is that pleasant for you? Losing, constantly being stolen from because you're stealing from others, is that pleasant? Is it pleasant for you to cut corners and step on other people's toes to get your way? Is that really pleasant? How do you feel about that? So you point out that practicing adharmic practices, though gets you what you want, it's not healthy for you. Dharma samsthapanarthaya, again, why are they here? To reestablish dharma throughout the society, so that your future generations will have some platform to walk on. Now, let me show us examples how Krishna, who's an avatar, has influenced positively or corrected the thinking processes of people in the Mahabharata. And the reason I want to do this is to show you, instead of talking about these big visions like lifting up a mountain, I'm just going to bring it down to earth and show you how an influential character who's discerning can guide us into the right ways of thinking. So when we look at Bhishma, he was told by Krishna, it's wonderful that you are taking care of your kingdom, Hastinapur, and you're committed to doing so. It's wonderful that you are committed to protecting your wife and husband and your house. But as you know, the more time you spend in that house or that environment or that kingdom of yours, you notice that the people around you are not following the values that you stand for. And yet you have decided to ignore your own values and support them anyway. Do you think this is smart? Krishna says this to Bhishma. But Bhishma was, though hearing this, he could not entirely hear, right, or entirely put himself out of the situation because he was now supporting an unrighteous king, Dhritarashtra. So as he said, I commit to protecting this kingdom. I commit no matter what. But then he didn't take into account who is going to run this kingdom. And when he found Dhritarashtra, who is unrighteous, he still said, no matter what, I'm going to protect this kingdom. So now he's in a conflict. What do I support? My vow or something that's even higher than a vow? What's higher than your vow, than your commitment? That your so-called commitment to stay all your life and protect. What's even higher than that? It is that which will survive you and I. Righteousness, dharma. I can protect my vow, but what is going to continue after your vow? The very thing that sustains society right now, and because of which we still have a right society to live in, which is basic ethics of conduct. And therefore, it shows you here that even a good person can fall, can make the right decision, and out of their confusion, make subsequent mistakes. Such as, I'm going to stay with you, I love you, I'm going to protect you. But then what happens is, slowly, one gets entangled and more attached to the other. And so we start to say now, love is turning more into not accommodation and support, but into control. And so love initially, though righteous and harmonious, has now been mixed up with domination or surveillance. I want to know everything that you're doing. Where are you going? With whom are you talking? Who was on the phone? And why did you not come back home 10 minutes late? So now love has gone astray. So this is exactly what happened with Bhishma. He started out right, as we all do, but through course of time, it got mushed up with all these other personal issues, and now you lost track of what it means to be pure in your love, pure in your accommodation, pure in your protection. Another example was when the dice game was going on. He was sitting in the palace, and though he knew that something was wrong between, the Pandavas were losing their dice to Shakuni, who apparently was cheating, though he knew, he didn't say anything. So let me ask you this. Have you ever been in a situation where you knew something was a scam and you saw someone being scammed and you said, no, stop, that's a scam, don't do that? Were you ever in a situation like that? Like there's those cup people in I think France or Italy, when they put a ball underneath 3 cups and you're absolutely certain, the ball is underneath that cup. You know the scam? I call it a scam because it is a scam most of the time. They basically take the ball, you don't even see it, it's sleight of hand. And no matter how much they shuffle, ball is not underneath any one of those cups. So now suppose you know that, and you see someone who paid him $50, would you say to them, hey, it's a scam? Or you would just come and watch them suffer, lose $50? Hopefully, you would tell them, hey, that's a scam. So that's what I'm talking about. Bhishma knew something scamish is going on, but he didn't want to shake things up. He wanted to appear like this wise person who's sitting there under control, and I don't have to say anything because it's very comfortable not to do anything. However, Krishna immediately, if Krishna were to be called in that room, he would have immediately intervened and said, no, this is wrong. You are not obligated to pay for a game that was not dharmic to begin with. It's a cheating game. Get out. Get your money back. Fight for your money back. That's the right way to do it. Because you are not above dharma. The cheater is not above dharma. Dharma is above you. Therefore, you need to fight for your lost property, which was stolen under a dishonest basis. We often have this idea, don't ever lie. You heard this? Don't lie. Does that sound realistic to you? Would you be still here in this position that you're in if you never lied? I don't think any of us would have survived by now if none of us lied. So can you now say that dharma is always following the rules? The world doesn't work like that. Dharma is a general guiding principle which keeps you healthy and everyone else around you. Despite that, there are times when you have to sort of do your little, magic to get through situations. That is what we are saying here. You have to look at what is each situation demanding and then respond according to that situation. And then we have Karna. He was emotionally starving because he was born in a position he didn't have friends, or nobody saw him, nobody recognized him. He was brilliant in what he did, but he felt like nobody sees me, nobody hears or recognizes me, nobody relates to me. I'm brilliant, but nobody relates to me. And for some reason, he couldn't connect with people. Maybe he was too rebellious or whatever it was. But then what happened was he came to do some archery, right? And with the Pandavas, and Duryodhana instantly recognized this brilliance of his, and he took him under his wing. And Karna loved this because he was emotionally starving, and therefore he was cognitively compromised. Because when your emotions are high, how's your intellect? Is it high there too? That's why we say sometimes love makes you blind. There's a truth to that. It's also sometimes misinterpreted. In a way, it's true because you're so kind of chemically pumped up now that there's no real space for thoughtfulness. So in that same way, when Karna is emotionally vulnerable or emotionally starving, he's not really thinking, is this friend really the kind of person that I want to be? The answer is no. Duryodhana was not the person he wants to be. So he was emotionally starving, cognitively compromised and therefore psychologically vulnerable. Why? Because his need for love overshadowed the dharmic, what is a larger thing in life to be lived for. Therefore, you cannot allow a simple relationship because you're getting one small thing fulfilled that you never got in your childhood, and that is attention. Allow that to steal your entire life from pursuing and going for bigger things. Can't allow that because you're born with so many capacities, and those capacities are yours. Krishna said to him, consider your options. I know you're getting your emotional satisfaction, but there is so much more to life than just your emotional satisfaction. Consider that. Now, unfortunately, most people are like Karna. They're stuck in their want to feel good. I just want to feel good. I found someone finally that's making me seen. And that steals the show from you. It kind of just becomes the whole thing of life now. Yay, I am finally seen. I've got that big eye. You know, that big eye? It used to be like a small eye. Now it's a big eye. And I really enjoy this big eye. And I don't want to go back to that small eye. And so this was Karna. And then Draupadi. Draupadi, she didn't want Krishna to go and negotiate one last time with Dhritarashtra and Duryodhana to get Indraprastha back for the Pandavas. Why? She tried to stop him. She said, Krishna, I know you're powerful in your words. If you go, then you might stop this war from happening. But if you do that, I'm not going to get my revenge because I want to see Duryodhana die for what he's done to me. And Krishna's like, wait, you're worried about getting your revenge? This war is not just about you. We're talking about good families that you will meet on the bus and have a wonderful conversation with. Those people, thousands of them are going to die. And you're thinking about getting your revenge. Is that the right thing to do? Think about it, Draupadi. And then Duryodhana. Duryodhana was a tough character. He was approached by Krishna and told to return a fair share of property back to the Pandavas. Because you built the property, it's your property, give it back, right? Give it back to the Pandavas. And he was not cooperative, Duryodhana. And though he wasn't cooperative, did Krishna, punish him right then and there? No, he just said, okay, that's fine. There will be consequences. It's called your adrishtapalam, your later consequences. So this means that the greatest wisdom that Krishna showed us in this situation is you did your part. And after you did your part, you leave it at that. He said, I said my part to a difficult character. Even if they may not respond to you, you still did your part. Because if you walk away and you didn't do your part, what would that be like for you? Holding this inner thought, I didn't do my part, I didn't say anything. Would that be freeing for you? No, you see? So you have to do your part, even if the other person may not respond to you doing your part. Because it is for your good to let it out. Just say it with the best intentions. This is what I think. I think what you're doing is wrong. In your own way, in your own language, of course, not in my language, your language, and leave it at that and see what happens. So he's showing us that Krishna is not doing this head-on, right, clash against someone. He just offers his message and says, I've done my part. Now I leave it to you. You are given free will to choose. So go and choose it. And then Yudhishthir. Yudhishthir is the kind of guy who, or girl who likes to please, doesn't want things to be too, right, doesn't want to shake things up, doesn't want to rock the boat. And so he was a good character, but he had this kind of complexion that he wanted to be like a good character. He wanted to show himself like he's a good character to all people. And the way that you do that is how? You never get angry. You retain your composure, right? You just swallow it in. You don't show that you're disturbed. You just give people what they want. You play the slow role of, oh, it's just easy. Yeah, no problem. Yeah, have it. Yeah, it's all good. This kind of thing. This was Yudhishthir. So what has this caused for Yudhishthir? Well, when Dhritarashtra offered them a desert to the Pandavas, Yudhishthir was the head of his brothers. He just accepted without any negotiations or any confrontation. Says, no, you can't give us a desert. We belong to this family. You can't just give me a forest which is dry and you know, uninhabitable. You need to give me a proper, you know, luxurious or luscious forest. So he didn't negotiate what he was given. That's his first mistake. Can you relate to this character? Where you are given whatever you're given and you don't even want to negotiate. You just want to sort of accept it to avoid confrontation. You're not the only one in this category. A lot of people go by their decisions on avoiding confrontation. You're not the only one. It's a skill to be able to say, wait, what else do you got? Let's start a conversation. It's a skill to do that. Yudhishthir didn't want to because he wants to be this wise, easygoing person. Then again, somebody burns your house, suppose, and you know who it is. And you go out, you come out alive. Next day you meet him and you pretend like, ha, 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 hi, how's it going? You don't say anything. You hold it in. You don't want to rock the boat because you want to be the wise person who's composed. Then again, he goes and plays dice with Duryodhana. But then Duryodhana says, no, 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 come and play with Shakuni. What would a normal person then? Suppose I invite you and say, come and play chess with me. Okay, I'm going to play chess with you. And you come to my house and I brought some other person here and you say, no, go play with this person. You're going to say, I didn't come for him. I want to play chess with you. Again, Yudhishthira didn't say anything. So he just accepted. So he just keeps on accepting things, remaining, silent, not wanting to rock the boat. And this shows you how a good human being can also be rigid in his approach. Then we have Arjun. Arjun, he was trained to look at the difficult situations and to remain composed and do what has to be done for protection of the society. This is a skill. Just like you are trained in your job to do what you need to do. It's a skill. Now, suppose you come to your job and you start to complain about the smallest things, like the air conditioner is too cold, the window is open, they're speaking too loud, there's too many flies in here, the chairs are not, they don't have cushions on them. What's the boss going to tell you? Look, the environment cannot be perfect, my friend. You are not here to be comfortable. You're here to do a job. Make yourself comfortable. It's not our job to do that. We're just putting the chairs and aircon here. You need to figure that out. So like this, Arjun was a trained warrior in his archery skills, and he was prepared to fight. He had 13 years to think about it, to plan it out. And when it was time to do so, he started to back out. And Krishna reminded him, wait, you are trained. You were born in a family with luxury and skills and teachers that most of these people will never get. You thus have to, being given those privileges, continue that legacy because that is from where you're from. Other people in the city, they can mourn, they can cry, they can be scared, but they didn't get the training. You got the training. You can't do that. You're specifically, this is who you are. So go and restore your position because that is not only good for you, it's also good for everyone else. That's what Krishna told to Arjun. He reminded him, look, there's just no place. It's not appropriate to start to complain and to chicken out at this time. It's not appropriate. You are given a life. You're given a body to breathe. You're given muscles to move. Use it according to your skills. Now, when it came to Arjuna's mistake, he won Draupadi. He was doing archery. This is how, you win a wife. How do you win a wife? So all men, we come together. Here's a bow and arrow, and then we got to aim at the bullseye. The one who gets the bullseye, we score. We get the woman. So maybe this is in that region. And he brought her to his mother, Kunti. Knocked on the door, and he says, hey, mother, look what I brought. And mother was preparing some firewood, and she said to him, oh, well, share it with your brothers. And both Draupadi and Arjuna were just shocked. Like, you want me to share my wife? You want me to share my wife with my brothers? Right? He didn't even say that. He just blindly accepted mother's authority. So what does this show you? Blind obedience to authority, even if they are your mother or father, gets you into trouble, because you are meant to think, not to accept things. So he didn't even say, hey, mom, I'm not talking about an object. I'm talking about a woman. That's all he could have said. He didn't. And then he was with his brothers at the dice game with the Kauravas. So his brother, Yudhishthir, was playing Shakuni. And though Arjun was handsome, was skilled, was talented, was communicative, he just watched his brother lose elephants, lose money, lose the kingdom, lose 4 other brothers. Did Arjun say anything? He didn't. He kept quiet. Why? Blind obedience to authority. Even if they are your brother, still you need to say something based on your discretion when you detect something is off. So it's very comfortable to sit there and just sort of, no, they know what they're doing. You know this mode? They know what they're doing. Most of the time, we don't know what we're doing. So it helps you to intercept once in a while and say, wait, I really think you should listen to my opinion. I don't care if you're my guru or, my mom or my dad. Based on my experience, this is what I have to give you as feedback. And it can go a long way to do that. And so what can we conclude from all these situations? At that time in the Mahabharata, every character was confused. Every character was as confused as the characters of the Mahabharata are today. We are those characters. But the confusion, was it equal for all people? Was Duryodhana confused equally as Arjun? No, it was different. There's a scaling, you can give it a scale. 10 out of 10 is maximum confusion. 0 out of 10 is no confusion at all. Arjun, where was he? Maybe a 3. You cannot give 10 confusion to anyone, because suppose I say to you, where was Duryodhana? And what's the temptation? 10 out of 10. No. No, nobody is completely confused, because you cannot completely override Dharma program. For instance, when Karna was doing archery and showed his skills, the Pandavas got arrogant and they said, who are you? We are better. You don't belong here. So the Pandavas in that moment had no empathy, but Duryodhana had empathy. He was able to recognize, this is a vulnerable human being, and he comes here to show his skills. I want to take him in. So you cannot say that he is completely confused. No one is. Otherwise, you would have not been born a human being. Anyone who is born a human being, you're a mixture of confusion and knowledge. Punya and papam. Therefore, every character was at some point in that scale, 0 to 10, different confusions for different characters. And even though Krishna was an avatar and he did his best was there a guarantee that he was successful in transforming every character in the Mahabharata? In fact, how many characters was he successful with, Krishna? I think just one, right? Interesting. One character. How many characters do you have in your life? With how many characters are you successful? Not very many. Sometimes we're not even successful with our own character. So this means there's no guarantee, even if the Lord incarnate comes, that he will be able to penetrate through the hard walls of those thick, luscious impressions that you have come with and holding on to dearly. It's a lifetime progress. Today, we also have equal situations as in Mahabharata. For instance, people will say, you know, Bhishma was such a wise person, so was Karna. This is called a halo effect in psychology. You know what a halo effect is? When you have a halo over your head. So you see one positive trait about someone, and then you instantly assume everything is positive about that person. I remember when I saw Mahabharata first, this was my impression. He was so wise, everyone else is stupid. Typical black or white thinking, right? You're just like stupid and wise, that's all you have. So this was how we all start, right? Bhishma is so wise, and Karna, oh, is such a, I wish he's seen, I wish he's recognized, he deserves so much more. There's so much more behind these characters. They're not someone to have a discussion with, by the way. They're archetypes. Archetypes that serve as mirror reflections so that you can see yourself. You can see yourself in Karna. You can see yourself in Bhishma, who thinks he's wise, but he's actually fallen for the great way of confusion along the way. You can see yourself in Arjun, the one who's given all skills, all talents, and yet you find a way to sort of want to escape life. You can see yourself in Duryodhana, the one who wants to see him always thrive over the expense of other people, who has to get his way no matter what, the one who's entitled, the one who's, you know, wants it all on a silver platter. You can see yourself in Draupadi. So is Mahabharata a discussion about the characters, or is it a way of self-reflecting upon yourself? It depends who you ask. You ask a beginner mind, it's about characters, maybe. You ask an advanced mind, it is about me, to see myself, and even Krishna himself can be even interpreted not as an avatar. In fact, my first teacher taught me the Gita, didn't talk about avatar, Krishna as avatar, talked about Krishna as your inner intellect, the intellect that is sharp and discerning, always knows what is to be done, not always, but knows what is to be done and knows its truth. Is Dharma something that lives through people, or it lives through institutions? Like, what's the point of music and arts? We teach sometimes music and fine arts and dance, you know, in cultures to kids. Why do kids do this? Is it just about the music and dance and culture and singing, or is there something much subtler behind that? In fact, most of the dance shows, you know, especially for the kids ones, younger years, not the showy Bollywood style or America's Got Talent, I'm not talking about that, but the cultural shows, like you go to Bali or India also there. What is inculcated in most of those shows, the music, the dance? What do you think it is?
Balance and harmony.
It's not just music and arts. There's a purpose for this. It's inbuilt into society. So Dharma, it thrives through people. If you build, suppose this, imagine you build a building called Universal Ethics of Life. I tell you, that building will be subject to destruction, subject to vandalism, subject to attack constantly. Even when it's rebuilt, it will be again destroyed over and over. There's something about when you look at a building and it says universal ethics that are good for you. Suppose that's the slogan, universal ethics, good for everyone. How long is that building going to last? Wow, no way. Therefore, you cannot inculcate, you cannot spread true ethics through institutions. They get opposed. Ethics get spread through the people. They get passed through families. They get passed silently through music and dance in a very subtle way. The more gross, the more concrete you make it, the more it's subject under attack. So for it to survive for so long, you have to make it invisible. Why do you have libraries? Who are libraries for? Those who use libraries, right? So those who use libraries, scholars, for them to engage in their scholarly pursuits, to sustain scholarship, you need to build libraries. So if there's no libraries, can you have scholars? I know you can, but in this very limited example, suppose you can't. So for a scholar to learn, you need to give them a place to learn. So this means that a scholar implies the right place, the library, and the library implies a demand, the scholar. That means the scholar cannot learn without the library, and a library wouldn't exist without a scholar. Now, suppose you take away libraries and you say, no, I'm going to put a pizza store there. What would that do to the scholars in that region? It will reduce the value of scholarship. It will go down. Why? Because you're not protecting the culture, the places specifically designed for those few people who are using those very places to learn and to spread their teachings to everyone else. So just like a library is for scholars, why are ashrams for them? You see? Ashrams are there for swamis, those who continue this tradition. If you take away the ashram, there's no swami. There's no swami, there's no teaching. You know, Swami Dayananda, he was living in Rishikesh for, was 1970s or around that age. And at that time, there was lots of sadhus who were going there. And sadhus are living a simple life, living on bhiksha, alms, basically. And their whole journey is about studying. Now, he remembered, he said, during that time, when sadhus came there, immediately in Rishikesh, everyone would study. Why? Because whoever was in Rishikesh was studying. Therefore, when you go to an environment that is already prepared, already has the essence of study, of contemplation, what happens to your mind? It slips into that mode automatically. But now, if you go to Rishikesh, what happens? It's a tourist place. Now, when the sadhus go there, they start to build, learn musical instruments, start to, smoke ganja, as they call it, right? Whatever it is. They start to do anything but what a sadhu is supposed to do. Why? Because the environment no longer supports or is reflective of what a sadhu is supposed to be doing. So the environment affects the sadhu, and the sadhu affects the environment. So what does this mean for us? If your place and your house is a place that doesn't allow you to, doesn't inspire you, then it's very hard for you to persist this journey. So this means that if there's one thing we can take away is your environment, the people that you're with, who you hang out with, the discourses that you listen to on a daily basis has a vast impact on your state of mind and whether you and how long you persist. So this means it helps you to set up an environment in a way that it is just easy to slip into this knowledge. So what would you have to do to make it easy for yourself? How can rigid adherence to Dharma become problematic?
The example you gave was around people pleasing. The term I would use to describe it was people pleasing, which in itself isn't dharmic.
That means not setting boundaries for yourself, just swallowing it in and not saying your part, because that bitterness grows and grows, and it eventually has to go out somewhere else.
It can become quite dogmatic, so that you get set in a rigid set of laws and orders, and you follow a set this way. That's the dharmic way. So yeah, that's the way I'd view it.
Yeah. In fact, that reminds me, I noticed this one time. I was listening to one of the talks, and in that talk, I did not agree. He said, when food was being talked about, don't throw away food. Don't throw away. That's very bad to throw away food. So it's a very kind of a rigid statement. And I thought, but you see, who are you talking to? You're talking to a grihasta. All of us are grihastas, right? So now, is a grihasta getting a perfect portion of food every single day? Right? So to tell me don't throw away food, that's not realistic. A grihasta is a very different life. You're not living in an ashram where it's all just prepared for you, and right. So you cannot kind of say don't throw away food. A better statement would be, get your portions right. That's one step better than don't throw away food. Because then a person hears this and like, oh, I feel guilty, because who's not throwing away food?
I wanted to add kind of basically what was already said. It can be problematic to follow rules. I wouldn't say to follow Dharma, because Dharma, in my understanding, is ultimate truth. But if you follow rules, which is limited because rules are defined by words and therefore examples and so on, but then you can end up self-betraying, self with a capital S. And so, yeah, as you all said, then that becomes adharmic, because you're using your cognitive mind to follow a rule. Oh, but I must never steal. I must tell the truth. And so you end up not lying when you should, when someone's trying to follow you home, and you should tell them, no, I'm actually going, something like that. So because we're cognitively trying to follow the rules of being a spiritual person, and then we end up in trouble.
In fact, spirituality is brutal honesty. Just being for yourself finally for the first time in your life. Everything before, you could say, is mostly just being this showy person who's a good person. True spirituality is just learning. It doesn't serve me to pretend. I'm going to be an honest person as much as I can. I will share. And sometimes it's not even wise to share how you feel. That's the whole point. It was not saying, how do you feel? I hate you right now, right? Sometimes you need to hold it back. So, right, spirituality is becoming conscious and deliberate with your actions and flexible rather than this is how it is and there's no other way. This had its place. In fact, what's the difference between Advaita Vedanta, Dharma, and religion? Now, I'm not putting religion down. Religion actually is a brilliant starting point. But religion, when it comes to rules, they would say, do this and don't do that. Okay, wonderful. No problem there. It works. And if you don't do it, there's punishment. Okay, great. It definitely helped. It definitely helped some people. It certainly helped me a lot. But then you start to grow out of that and you start to say, okay, it's a lot more nuanced than just black or white rules. And therefore you have to respond wisely to every situation with the person that is with you, with the history that you have with them. So it's very dynamic, and you cannot possibly say to someone, don't do this, because you don't know their life, you don't know their history, and you don't know the circumstances in which they are, right, located.
I just ask, what's the relationship between Vedanta and Hinduism? Like, Like, what's a good answer for that?
Yeah, sure. So Hinduism is encompassing of, you could say, 6 schools of philosophy. So it's a vast field. It includes Veda, right? Veda, but it also can include now Kashmir Shaivism. It can also even include Buddhism, Vishishtadvaita, Sankhya Yoga. One of the last ones is also Advaita Vedanta. So Hinduism is for everything. It's a religion for everyone. But if you give things to everyone, then you have to, the more you know yourself by the involvement of that religion, the more you know yourself, the closer you come to the truth. So when you study the Shat Darshanas, the 6 schools of philosophy, you will see that after all these prior schools like yoga, Vishishtadvaita, Sankhya Yoga, Buddhism, the last one you come to is Advaita Vedanta. So Advaita Vedanta is just one section within the vast field, you can call it Hinduism. Although the second answer to that is you cannot quite call Advaita Vedanta Hinduism, because Advaita Vedanta is sharing the truth. You cannot call the truth a name. The truth is nameless. The truth doesn't have a name attached to it. Yeah. So Hinduism is a vast array of different views of life, and Vedanta is one of them. It's the one that is keeping with the reality. The other ones are just sort of there to accompany a mind that is operating at the level of, I'm a doer, I'm an enjoyer, therefore give me Karma Kanda section of the Vedas, and I'm going to pray and get results in the future and go to heaven. And then there is yoga. Yoga, give me asanas, give me meditation, give me samadhi. That also has a place for people. And then Buddhism. Buddhism negates everything. It says this is mithya, everything is mithya. And the world that you look at real, just reflect. It's totally relative. There's no real essence to the world. But they don't give you the final reality. So now you're saying, well, there's nothingness there. It's nothing. What do I stand on? No, not even that question. That too is just a bunch of words. That's also is mithya. So now you get kind of frustrated sometimes, and then you finally come to Advaita Vedanta, and they say there's one more reality, the final truth of all things, and that is Brahman, Satyam, Jnanam, Anantam, which we have discussed last week. Purnamadav, Purnamidam, Purnat, Purnamudachyate, Purnasya, Purnamadaya, Purnam eva avashishyate. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti.